weeks, I have been working on a very involved wool coat project. I finally finished that project. I have a video here, I have several videos here actually on the process of making that coat. You should definitely go check it out. After working on such an involved project for so many weeks, I'm definitely ready for some easier projects, some easier wins, and some sewing palette cleansers, if you will. So this week I am going to show you guys how I make rope bowls. That doesn't really roll off the tongue very well, rope bowls. Now this is a pretty simple project that you can do on a home sewing machine. So you want to look for cotton braided rope, and you can find this probably at your local hardware store or even at your local craft store. They probably have some of it, but I think you're going to get the best price by finding it online. I like to go to knotandrope.com to get my rope. They have really reasonable prices. It's priced by the foot, and you can order as many feet as you want. So I don't know if they ship internationally, but if you are looking for something similar in your area, look for maybe nautical ropes or ropes used for macrame projects, and that should lead you in the right direction. I ordered a 1/4 inch rope, and this is the rope that I've used in the past. It's firm enough that it's gonna hold its shape, and it's pretty hefty. I mean, it's a nice sturdy rope, and I do have experience sewing with this rope. The needle goes through it pretty easily from my experience. You're also gonna need some universal sewing needles. I like to use the Schmetz universal needles, and I'm going to be trying out the 110/18 size for this particular project. I think that's going to be heavy duty enough to get through the rope. And you're going to need some thread. I like to use the Gutermann all-purpose polyester thread for pretty much all my projects, but it works great for this as well. And I'm going to be using a color that just matches the rope. I have a Pfaff sewing, it's over here, a Pfaff sewing machine. In my experience, you don't need a super heavy duty sewing machine for this. The needle goes through this rope pretty easily, but I think you do kind of want to take your time with this process. You don't want to rush it too much, because you don't want to break a needle. So I ordered 100 feet of rope. You can do some calculations to get kind of a general idea of how much rope you're going to need for your bowl. So you're going to take your desired diameter of the bowl. So let's say I have a 6-inch diameter bowl that I want to make, and we're going to multiply that by pi, which is 3.14. That is going to give us the circumference of our bowl. Then you're going to take the desired height of your bowl. So let's say you want to do a bowl that is 4 inches high and divide that by 0.25 inches, which would be a 1/4 inch. That's going to give you the number of rows that you're going to have kind of stacked on top of each other for the rope bowl. And then you're going to take the number of rows and you're going to multiply that by the circumference, and that is going to give you the total length in inches of the amount of rope that you're going to need. So for a 6-inch diameter bowl with a 4-inch height, that comes out to roughly 304 inches. And if you divide that by 12 inches to get a foot, then you're going to have 25 feet approximately. Now, that does not take into account the base of your bowl, so you want to make sure that you add in a little bit of extra for the base. And I actually don't even know how to do that calculation for something that coils and gets bigger. I'm sure that you can figure it out by Googling it. But I would just throw in like a few extra, like, I don't know, 4 feet. That's probably way too much. Maybe, well, it may not be too much actually. But yeah, throw in a few extra feet for the base. So with my 100 feet of rope, I could probably make about 3 or 4 rope bowls that are 6-inch diameter and 4 inches high. Now this project also offers a great scrap busting opportunity. So if you have a lot of little like tiny sewing scraps, you can use those to add a little pop of color to these rope bowls. And I just happen to have a box full of scraps that I just couldn't bear to part with when I was doing my sewing room organization. I'm gonna go dig through my scrap bin and see what kind of cool colors of scraps I can find to kind of spruce these bowls up a little bit. Once I had all of my scraps picked out and categorized by color, I just ironed them flat to make them a little easier to work with, and I also made sure to cut off any seams or hems that were left on the scraps so they didn't add additional bulk when I sewed them on the bowl. I then cut the scraps into thin strips. I started out with 2-inch wide strips, but later decided to cut them down to about 1 inch to make them a little easier to work with. I also cut these straight on the grain, but I think it would actually be better to cut them on the bias so that the strips had a little bit of extra stretch, making them easier to wrap around the rope. I'm going to set my sewing machine to the zigzag stitch function, and I'm just going with about a 3mm stitch length, and for the stitch width I'm actually going to go really wide, so I'm going to go to 5 or more. To start the bowl, you just kind of want to start a little coil for yourself that's going to make it a little bit easier to get the stitching started without it kind of coming apart. So you're going to want to roll it several times like so. Get it to be about, I don't know, 1.5 to 2 inches. And then you're going to sew across in a cross shape like so, just to kind of keep these first few coils in place. And then once you have your little coil started, you can start sewing in the round, basically. So you can start coiling this and sewing around the perimeter of this, getting larger and larger. And this is going to form the base of our bowl. And you want that zigzag stitch to straddle the edge where the two pieces butt up against each other so that it's catching both pieces at the same time, and you're going all the way around, continuing to coil this as you go until you get it to the width that you want your bowl to be. Once you get this to the diameter that you want your bowl to be, you can start tipping up the base so that the coils start to form a wall around the bowl. I've actually decided to go with a kind of narrow cylinder for my bowl. I'm trying this. This is actually the smallest I've ever done it. So I'm just going to tilt this up and continue working my way around in a circular motion, trying to create the walls of this little rope bowl. So I've run out of bobbin, or either my bobbin thread broke. Yeah, my bobbin thread broke. So I'm just going to pull that out. And if this happens, I'm just going to start back a little ways from where it broke. So I'm probably going to start about here, about 1 inch behind where it broke. All right, so now I've managed to get my bowl height a couple of inches, 2.5 or so inches high. And I want to try to make this kind of a narrow, tall bowl. To do that, I'm going to need to get this a little bit more horizontal here. And it's going to be hard to do that because of the position of this above the needle. I'm just going to pop it inside out like so. Kind of reshape it a little bit. And now I want to put the bowl like this over the arm of the sewing machine so that I can start coiling around and letting this go under the arm of the sewing machine and kind of get a little bit more, you know, vertical positioning here. I don't know if that's going to work. I've actually never tried this, so let's just see if we can work. So typically this works a little bit better when you have larger bowls that have kind of a more shallow profile, I guess you could say. And the reason for that is just because it's easier to maneuver it around the parts of your sewing machine. So I've never actually tried to make one quite this small and with walls quite this like straight up and down. So I'm just kind of experimenting here, but we'll see how it goes. So now I'm going to start adding my strips of fabric to add some color to this. So I'm just going to take a strip and wrap it around the rope here right before it goes under the needle. I'm going to kind of just get it started, wrap it a couple times. And this particular fabric is a rayon fabric. It probably is going to spray just a little bit, but I'm not really that worried about it. I think it'll be okay. So I'm just going to kind of wrap it a few times just to get it started, working my way down the rope, and then I will continue sewing the coils as I was before. And then once I get to the end of a piece, I'll just add another piece. Okay, so I'm still connected here, but my little bowl is coming together. And I love how this is turning out. I'm gonna go just a few more rows. I'd kind of like it to be maybe about yay high, so I don't know, maybe like 10 more rows or less than 10. This is great. So this is about as narrow as I think I might be able to go with this. I'm looking at some of my other bowls back here. It's just really hard to get it really narrow and tall. So anyway, but I'm pretty happy with the shape of this. It seems like it's holding its shape really well, and I just wanted to take it off the machine and kind of take a look at it really quick, see how it's coming together. But I'm going to keep going, and then I will show you how to kind of finish off the edge of your bowl. So once you get to a place where you're ready to stop, you can do a few things. You can cut this off and just kind of tuck it into the bowl and sew it down to finish the edge. You can create handles by skipping a little bit of space and then coming back down so that you have a little bit of a gap here, and you would want to pull that out just a little bit so that you can create a little handle. Or you can create like a little loop, which is I think what I'm going to do. So I think what I'm going to do is actually go around one more time to have just the plain rope around the top perimeter, and then I'm going to create a little loop for hanging this basket. I'm just going to trim this rope. I'm going to give myself about, I don't know, 3.5 inches, 4 inches. And I'm going to trim it at an angle here. So I'm kind of giving it a little bit of a 45-degree angle trim so that kind of tapers a little bit there. And I'm just going to tuck that into the bowl here and sew over it. I'm going to kind of squish this together a little bit and sew across here. I'm really just trying to conceal this little end of the rope here. And I'm just going to go back and forth over that area to reinforce that a few times. And I'm just going to kind of go through and trim away some of these little strays, which is not totally necessary, but give it a little haircut. There you go. So if you're sewing a larger bowl, you don't have to flip it over and do it over the arm of the sewing machine like I did for the small one. You can just keep it tilted up because it's large enough to go around the parts of the sewing machine and not get held up. So you can really sew some pretty large bowls and just keep the bowl tilted in the up position without having to turn it inside out and turn it down over the arm of the sewing machine. And here is my rope bowl collection. I have made several of these and I use them all over my sewing room. I've done them in different color combinations and different handle types. This is a really large one that I love, and to create the handles I just skipped a little bit of the stitching to create a gap and then just continued stitching the rows normally the next time around. I've used different methods to add color to the bowls, like painting the bottom of a bowl, adding contrast stitching, and switching up the different fabric scraps for lots of color. I also think they make really adorable plant pot covers, and this one was a little bit too tall, so I just folded down the top, which I think adds a little bit of extra character to it. And I just use a little plant pot liner and stick the pot right inside. And they are super handy for storing all of my miscellaneous electronic supplies, especially things related to filming in my sewing room. So I use them a ton for that kind of thing. I also had the idea to hang one on the end of my sewing table, so I just used a little hook here that screws in and hung the basket from that to hold my scissors and my cutting tools, although it was a little bit droopy, so I thought maybe it would work better on my pegboard. It had a little bit of extra support against the wall and didn't fall over. How did I say this in the shower? I had it like all scripted out.